All right, hey everybody, happy Community Manager Appreciation Day. We're celebrating Community Manager Appreciation Day 2016 here. It is the 7th year that this day has been celebrated on the fourth Monday of January. It started 7 years ago with Jeremiah Owang, really just saying we should have a day as community managers to just take a moment and celebrate ourselves. And reflect on our industry and what how we've progressed. So we've been doing this live hangout for 4 years now on Community Manager Appreciation Day. Man, that's a lot to say. CMAD. We'll just call it CMAD. And for the last 3 years, we've done awards. Really excited this year that we have over 300 nominations for those awards, which we'll be announcing throughout the next 20-some hours. So this is panel 3, or hour 3 of 24. And hello, my name is Brew, the Director of Awesome with BTC Revolutions, also co-producer at My Community Manager. And I'd love everyone to just in the studio here to introduce themselves as well.
Hey everybody, I'm Sherry Ruddy. I'm the Community Manager at Magento and co-producing JR Hangout with Brew.
Hi guys, I'm Kristen Cardos. I work in community for Convince and Convert and V3 Broad Suite.
Hello, I'm Rachel Miller, social strategist at Pure Matter.
Hey guys, it's Brock. Dom and I are up in Seattle, struggling a little bit. Brock DC, I'm the community manager for Meshfire, and I'm also the founder of Amplify Yourself. And yeah, and this is Dom.
Hey guys, Dom. I am community manager, project manager for BTC Revolutions. Also want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, which we're really excited for this year for CMAD. We have Salesforce Community Cloud, Higher Logic, Online Community Results, Sprout Social, Vanilla Forums, Zoomph, communitymanagement.org, socialmedia.org, Amplify Yourself, Igloo Internet, and of course Meshfire. So thank you so much to our sponsors. And just to let everybody know, the first award we actually are going to be giving out at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. So make sure you do check out that.
Awesome. And so this panel is the skills needed to be a great remote community manager. We're going to turn things over to Jessica. Take it away, Jessica.
Hi. First of all, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We have an awesome panel talking about remote work and community management, and I'm just going to kind of dive right in and kind of get everyone to give their intros. Starting from on my screen, left to right, so it might be reversed for everyone else. Boss, do you want to Boss, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. So my name is Bas van Leeuwen, Bas for short. I work at Community Analytics, a company I founded myself, where we provide analytics for community managers. And you invited me because I'm also a community manager and I work remotely, so, you know, here we are.
Awesome. Great intro. Brianna.
Hi guys, my name is Brianna Green. I'm the community manager for Crowdsourcing Week. We are a company that helps other companies transition from the old economy to the new digital economy. We host a couple of week-long conferences on crowdsourcing and crowdfunding each year in Asia and in Europe. The next one is coming up in London this April. And I'm also work remotely as a community manager, often traveling as a digital nomad, and I'm joining you guys today from New Orleans.
Very cool. Almost Mardi Gras time, right?
Correct. Coming up in a couple weeks.
Nice. Katherine. A quick intro?
Hi, sorry. Sarah is next on my screen, so I wasn't expecting it to be my turn. I'm Katherine. I work remotely for eModeration, which is a 100% remote community management focused agency. Based, so far as you can say, is such an endeavor, is based anywhere, out of London. We work for some of the world's largest brands. I also work with Popeo, which is a social media simulation startup. So we simulate crises breaking on social media and help people know how to better respond to crisis. And I've been working remotely for about 2 years. I also volunteer remotely on the crisis line.
Very cool. And last but certainly not least, Sarah. Sarah, your turn. Hawk.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, so I have only ever worked remotely in community. I'm currently working for Fever Bee in London. I work out of New Zealand. So community for me has always, as I say, been a remote endeavour, and I can't imagine it any other way.
Let me unmute. Sorry, and let's get started. First question that I had for all of you. First question that I had for all of you guys. As I'm having a few technical difficulties.
So the first
skill or
question.
trait.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry for the skills. Sorry about that. Moving right along, what's the one skill or trait that you think all remote community managers need to be successful?
So how do we decide who answers?
Just jump right in.
Right. So the way I see it, because you're removed from your boss, your team, whatever, the one skill that you need is gonna be the one skill that we should all already have as online community managers, and that's gonna be communication. And like in any long-distance relationship, it's gonna take a lot of effort, and you need to be conscious of the fact that it's gonna take a lot of effort. But as long as you are, and as long as your team is, and you take the time to say hello in the morning, right? Because when you're in an office environment, there's a lot of implicit kind of bonding moments where you share a cup of coffee, you walk over, you say, hey, how was your weekend? And we tend to kind of skip that when we work online. So it's much harder to make this personal connection. Whereas if you kind of manage to set aside 20 minutes a day to just catch up with people, you don't need to do that every day. I mean, if there is a social media crisis, please don't. But apart from that, take the conscious effort to kind of communicate more than you feel should be needed. I don't know if the rest of you agree. I mean, especially for you, Sarah, I mean, you're literally on the other side of the world of the rest of your team. So when you say, hey, good morning, well, as you can see, the sun is coming up here in the Netherlands, whereas your room looks quite brightly lit. So I can imagine that there's a bit of a twist there when you say, hey, good morning, and they're all, well, you know, it's Sunday afternoon here. What are you talking about? Especially since you rise at like 5 a.m. So
Yeah.
how do you deal with that?
That's how I make it work, actually. I get up at 5 a.m. Well, that's not the only reason. But getting up at 5 a.m. means that I have a good amount of crossover with my team at the end of their workday and in the morning, which keeps on track and keeps communication lines open. I do it because I have a family as well, so it's not purely selfless. But that would be, in short, the way that I do it. And I absolutely agree with all of your tips, especially around over-communication, because tiny things that don't get communicated properly turn into much, much bigger things. But I think my number one tips are a very practical one, and it's to do with setting alarms. The thing that I find probably the most challenging about remote work is, especially the time zone means that I have meetings at really strange and unusual times of day that wouldn't necessarily be regular or expected. So I set alarms so that I never have the awkward forgetting of a meeting situation gone.
Right. Well, actually, I think that's a very good one. But especially when you have like an in-person meeting and someone is 3 minutes late, it's kind of annoying, and you kind of glare at them and you get over it. Whereas when it's an online meeting, I mean, you're just sitting there venting and you're annoyed, and I mean, that's the typical things that kind of are exaggerated when it's only online contact, right? So
yeah, and you've got too much time to think afterwards as well, and so rather than just keeping dialogue going, sometimes you make false assumptions. It's never cool.
Absolutely. And that actually kind of chimes in. I'm glad communication came up. And that kind of segues really nicely to the next question, which is, what tools do all of you guys use to help communicate with your teams internally?
So because I'm on multiple teams, both the volunteer team and the e-moderation team, I regularly have Slack, Skype, and Google Hangout all running at once, and it's not unusual for me to get a message on all of them. Plus, the crisis line has its own custom-built platform, which I might be on. And then there's also more asynchronous tools like Basecamp, email. I have to be really good at juggling a lot of tools. I have to be good at not letting one thing interrupt me while I'm kind of working on another project, but also being sure that I'm responsive if something comes up that is an emergency that needs my input right away. And I've had to get really good at managing email managing email inboxes with lots of folders and being very, very organized. I'm curious to hear what other people have to say.
I definitely agree with you, Catherine, on the Skype and the Hangouts and Slack all open simultaneously. You've got to be good at juggling lots of different open tabs and apps. Our team also uses WhatsApp as our instant messaging tool for more urgent communication. And we're also a team that's spread out through many different time zones, from the US all the way over to Australia. So making sure you've got your time changes right in order to show up for meetings at the right time is incredibly important, as Sarah was saying. And we use a tool called timeanddate.com, which makes it really easy to plug in a particular time of day and what cities the other people you're meeting with are in, and it will show you all of the times that work for people across multiple time zones. And the same thing if you're having an event. It can also show you, anyone can click the link and find out what time zone that's happening for them locally. So that's been very useful.
We're similar in that we, well, actually not in that we use a number of tools, but in that we've tried all of the tools that have already been mentioned. And I think that raises another really important tip for me, and that is to close some of those tools down when you're on another task, because we get a bit bombarded with notifications and can be a distraction if you've got deadlines or if you're in meetings. So I only keep open. I also used to work at e-moderation, Catherine, so I know there's standards as to what you have to have open for security reasons, but otherwise, within reason, I shut as much as I can while I'm on task.
All really, really great points. And a bunch of you guys already kind of brought this up, but communicating across time zones can always be challenging. And then maybe this is more specifically to Brianna as well, but like, how do you keep yourself productive and motivated and communicating effectively when you're on the road or maybe not at your home base?
Right. So it's definitely slightly different when you're on the road or traveling or in an unfamiliar place. Personally, a few things that I found that help keep me productive and motivated. One is when I'm traveling, I'll typically stick to bigger cities. I found that there's usually better Wi-Fi. It's easier to find co-working spaces. And that the general hustle and bustle of a city keeps me energized to work in a way that maybe a more remote mountain or island setting doesn't. For other people it might be different, but for me, I find the cities to be really a more motivating place. Also, to make a routine is helpful, a routine that you can maintain while you're traveling. Just setting your agenda for each day in the morning when you wake up and sticking to it, and also creating self-imposed deadlines. Say you're somewhere like Bangkok or somewhere you've never been, and that impulse to get out and explore can be a really strong motivator to wake up early and get your work done early, so then you can get out and enjoy this new place that you're in. And also being flexible is really important. Sometimes your plans go out the window, the Wi-Fi at the coffee shop goes out, you're on your way to the airport, and your boss asks you to hop on Skype, and so you just have to also be willing to be very flexible, to wake up early and get work in when you can, and also work from the airport or any odd corner that you might be able to find Wi-Fi. And those are a few things I've found that have really helped me stay productive and motivated while on the road.
Really, really, really great tips. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add?
Like Brianna, I also do the digital nomad thing. I originally started by traveling just to bigger cities, and I would always try to get an Airbnb that I knew I could work from as kind of a base. Lately, I've had better success even going to smaller places. Like I went to an island off the coast of Seattle and didn't travel into Seattle most of the trip. And the way that I managed that was by going to hang out with another remote worker. So I got a place to stay on my own, but I went over and worked with her from her home, and it was nice for her to have someone around, and it was nice for me to kind of have that office-y environment a little bit and not feel like I was bound to coffee shops. So my biggest tip has been just finding community with other remote workers if traveling is a priority for you.
I guess the only thing that I would add to that would be around just prioritization of tasks, and when you do have limited time in the day, or potentially limited time, whether or not you're prepared to admit it first thing in the morning, that you make sure that you get urgent replies and deadlines out of the way first, and then anything else that happens later is a bonus. Otherwise, I find that I really have to heavily load at one end of the week, which isn't healthy with deadlines, which I guess raises another point about managing other people's expectations really carefully when you're traveling as well, so that they're not expecting you to get that done within 24 hours necessarily if that's not going to be a realistic target.
Really, really, really great points. Kind of moving from one side to the other side of the spectrum, which is it can be really easy to maybe when you're even working, when you're just on a laptop or your desk is only a few feet away, it can be really hard to disconnect from work at the end of the day. Do you guys have, I'm curious to hear, do you guys have any routines or tips that you have to ensure that you do take ample time to disconnect? Because that is important to be more creative.
I use separate browsers for everything. I use a browser for e-moderation. I use a browser for when I'm working on the line. I use a browser for my own personal stuff, and I put them on Macs. You can use spaces, so I put them in different spaces, and I actually close them when I'm done for the day and only keep whatever maybe the most important communication tool is open in another space. Like maybe I'll keep my email open, or maybe I'll keep my Skype open, but I close everything else and walk away.
I do a similar thing, but the problem that I tend to have more often is the fact that I've still always got my phone with me, so I turn all badge notifications off my home screen, and that way I have to make an active choice to choose to look at something rather than just getting momentarily distracted by a badge.
I've just started using a tool called Toggle. It's a time tracker, which I've really enjoyed even just in these couple weeks that I've started using it. It was one of my New Year's resolutions to start tracking my time a lot more specifically when I'm working, what I'm working on. And I found that since I've been doing that, when that timer is running, it's helped me be 100% completely focused on what I'm doing in that moment, And then alternatively, when the timer's off and I step away to take a break or disengage for the day, it's helped me to more fully be disengaged as well. Just having that on-off switch quite physically on your desktop has done a surprisingly helpful job for me in terms of reminding me when to be fully turned on and fully turned off.
I find also that it's often dictated by family things and deadlines and timetables. But if I leave my laptop out on the table, then it's too easy to get distracted. So I make a conscious choice to fold it up and put it under the table. Somebody else that works with me that has a laptop, an iPad for recipes and reading and anything like that that needs to happen in personal time. To avoid distractions as well, which I thought was a cool idea.
Great points, everyone. One might argue that burnout is a bigger risk for community managers who are working remotely part or all of the time. What strategies and tactics, and this kind of goes right along with that, what strategies and tactics do all you guys use to take breaks and ensure that you recharge both at the end of the day as well as creatively as well? Maybe start with Boss on this since he's been a little quiet.
There we go. Sorry, my internet is dropping on and off, so let me just set up and I'll get back to you. Sorry about that.
No worries. Does anybody have anything that they want to chime in about tips for what strategies they do for how often they take breaks or communicating that?
I can do that.
Great.
I schedule gym sessions into my calendar and make them set as away time, and it seems sometimes ridiculous that I should have to go to that degree of vigilance, but otherwise it just doesn't happen, and it's nobody's fault except my own. But that way I change the way I think about that time and make sure nothing gets booked and there's no reason that I can't make it. So that's been working well for me for a very long time.
Like Sarah, I schedule gym sessions in advance. I burned out quite hard at the beginning of my time working remotely. I was working all sorts of odd hours to help people, and I think what has helped is understanding that we have a large team at eModeration. If I'm not able to cover at a particular time, that is an issue where we need to get another team member, not where I need to keep saying, okay, I'm going to work at midnight and at 5 a.m. So now I have core work hours that I stick quite strictly to of 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. my time, 6 days a week. And that was really important in recovering from burnout. Also, making sure that I scheduled gym sessions. And another thing that helped me to recover was I started a ritual of asking myself a set of 5 questions every morning to make sure that I'm progressing on goals in different areas of my life. So I ask myself about what I'm doing for work today, what I'm doing to help people today, what I'm doing for my own personal self-care and development today. The questions are along those lines so that at the end of the day, when I answer those for myself and set up the next day and set up what I want the answers to be for the next day, sort of goals, then I know that I've progressed. And that was really key to recovering from the kind of bad burnout that I had.
Yeah, I guess, again, for me, it comes down to being fortunate to be juggling family and work, because that kind of enforces a balance that I wouldn't necessarily self-impose where they're not hard boundaries. So while some people see that as a difficulty of remote working, it's also got its benefits.
I think if I were to go back to an office, I would now be much better at some of these skills than I was certainly when I worked in an office.
Really, really, really great points. Boss, do you have anything? Is your internet connection any better? Do you have anything you want to add?
I think this connection is a bit better, but
Great.
I don't really have anything to add. I mean, most of the points have been covered quite well. I think you need to find something that works for you. I mean, for me, getting up at 6 a.m. every morning wouldn't work at all. I mean, that would drive me mental. But you know, I really like that some days you can just start work at 9 a.m. and then just plow through and you're done at 5. And then sometimes you have those days where you start at 11 a.m. and you end up at 2 a.m. You end your day at 2 a.m. But you know, you've been to the gym, you've been to the coffee shop. It's all nice. But I personally haven't had the issue of burnout or even something approaching burnout. Not yet, at least. So for me, this kind of freedom now works okay, but I can imagine that for some people it just doesn't, and then you need a structure. And I think that was very well covered. Yeah.
I used to find that I used to get burnout, and well, actually, to be fair, I'm not sure I've ever had it, but the closest I've ever come to getting it was volunteering, so doing community volunteer work outside of my normal job, and that's when hours really start to stack up, and you are equally as passionate for the entire length of your day because you go from one thing that you do to a completely different thing, and so you kind of re-energize. So I found that actually working professionally in paid roles remotely has lessened the propensity for burnout anyway, which has been another pleasant side effect.
I'm curious if anyone here has done like a digital detox or completely stepped away from connectivity when they were on vacation. I know it's something some of my coworkers have done. I've never seemed to quite be able to put down, you know, the internet and the connectivity completely, you know, over the weekends or you know, when I'm away. But I'm curious. It's something I'm considering for this year, and I'm curious if anyone here has tried it, and if so, how, you know, was that helpful in avoiding burnout?
So generally, when I'm going on holiday, I make it a point not to activate like international roaming. So you only can check it when you're at a coffee shop or when you're in a cafe. And when your team knows that, when you set the expectation that you won't respond, then the expectation actually is that you won't respond, and you're still available if they need you because they can just call you, you know, like it's 1999. And I find that works really well because in general, when there's a crisis situation, and that's the thing that you're afraid of course, you know, they'll reach you. They'll send carrier pigeon if needed. But the normal day-to-day grind, I mean, if you don't have the procedure set up that other people can handle it, well, then that's the reason why you're burning out, right? That it's not that you're checking your email, it's that you're continuously in a state of stress because things might not get handled properly.
That's a really, really, really great point. And actually I wanted to pose this question to all of you guys. What processes do you guys have in place to ensure that other people of your team to ensure that you know things are going to be the day-to-day is going to be handled when you have a sick day or you do end up taking a vacation?
I'm fortunate in that I work in a company of community managers, so I think we'd be in trouble if one of the others couldn't step in and take over. But to be fair, I have never been very good at handing over. Not so much because I'm worried that other people couldn't do it, just because it's become such a habit. You know, people fall down dead occasionally, and companies don't stop as a result. But I learned that really recently. People Be Rich in particular is especially good at enforcing holidays. And I had the first holiday for summer that I've had in 7 years just this last January. So yeah, really cool. I mean, I've been away a lot, but I never switch off. So it was refreshing to actually be forced to do so. I don't say that often, but yeah. So that's really nice, and I think it really is important. And I feel fortunate that I work for a company that does value that. And if you work for one that doesn't, then that's probably one of the first changes that should be made.
I think actually just going away, taking that, I mean, you can start with baby steps, right? I mean, take the Friday and the Monday off, don't check your email and see what happens. And then you highlight the pain points. And then maybe, you know, a month later you take Monday and Tuesday off. And you kind of build it up because in my experience, this is one of those places where the fear of what's going to happen is much larger than what is actually gonna happen. I mean, we'll be fine. Your community is gonna be fine. I mean, the worst that can happen to a community is trolls invading, I guess. Well, you know, in that case, open your laptop and deal with them. But, or, you know, you'll have infighting. Well, most communities can actually deal, and this is a harsh truth, but the better you are as a community manager, the least your community needs you on a like minute-to-minute basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or am
No, you're right. I was very relieved to see that none of you jumped in and started trolling while I was on my holiday in January. Maybe you could do that next year.
We'll throw a little trolling party, yeah.
Kind of moving on to a topic that's a little bit, and moving on to a different topic, which is, what do you think is the biggest mistake that people make when they first start to work remotely, be it, you know, 1 day a week or full-time as a remote community manager? You can either speak from your, don't all be quiet.
I was going to say, shall I take it again? Come on, guys. I've got one, and I'll be honest, because it was a mistake that I made for probably the first 6 years of my community management career, and that was working from the couch. And while in some ways that was a constraint of the house that I was living in, it also just became a habit, sometimes of convenience, but which ended up being really an inconvenience because I had trouble switching off, hence the laptop under the coffee table rule, which shouldn't need to be necessary. Yeah, I would recommend having a separate space for work if at all possible, especially for things like hangouts. I'm sitting in my parents' upstairs lounge, which isn't ideal because I don't have an office. So yeah, having a workspace that's separate from anything else that you do in your life that'd be my number one tip.
That's a really good one, Sarah. I think having a good place set up to work, where you can kind of settle into a routine, and that's kind of your productive corner of your home or somewhere that you go to get good work done is really important. One thing that I found challenging, especially in the beginning, is, you know, you're used to maybe before going into an office and having that kind of define your day, and then all of a sudden, you know, if you're working now remotely, especially if your coworkers are across different time zones, the lines between work and life can get very blurry, and so I think you know, employing more things like the time tracking in the beginning is important to kind of help manage those lines. You know, it also comes with working at a startup as well. I think, you know, it's you know, you're really motivated and you know, excited about what you're doing and want to work as hard as you can, sometimes late into the night or waking up early at the morning. But I think really finding a way to create a sense of balance between work and life is tough to do at the beginning, but also really important.
So this is a kind of practical one. I definitely agree that the biggest thing that people do is finding work and life balance, but a practical one is just being sure that you're you know, the first time that someone calls you for a meeting unexpectedly and you're not wearing clothes, you realize that this working in your pajamas thing is probably overrated. Um, and I actually found that by experiment, because I've tried working in clothes, working in pajamas, working in sweatpants, that it really does make me feel more professional, more able to handle whatever comes up if I've gotten fully dressed for the day and had a routine just like regular people. So I guess this goes back to routines. That's a mistake that I see people make commonly, and it's sort of amusing. But I guess for me, the biggest mistake I made when starting out remotely was just I would often take lack of communication or silence or economy in communication a bit personally, emotionally, and I've had to learn, okay, this probably is disorganization or forgetfulness rather than sort of malice. It's somebody forgot to loop you into an email. That's not because they think badly of you. That's more because, oh, they just didn't think that it might be important to you, and you have to go back and say, oh, well, actually, that is important.
Yeah, and I think that is also one of the underlying themes here, especially if you're part of a team that isn't remote. So four of your team members are in an office together, and you are the remote one. This even goes if you like work 1 or 2 days a week remote, right? The expectations that they understand that you're actually working is probably invalid, because the image that a lot of people have is as you say, you know, you're on the couch in your sweatpants, kind of browsing away Reddit and sending an email once an hour, and you really need to kind of. And I haven't mastered this secret yet, but somehow you need to tell and show your team that you're actively working, right? And I don't know how you guys manage that. I mean, Sarah, with you, it's you're online, so you know you are participating in the forum. You're a very involved community manager. But for the people that are more in a kind of monitoring role, in a more of a role that where you jump in, I think that. Yeah, how do you deal with that?
I'll jump in then. As you said, Buzz, I don't really need to worry too much about it. But one tip that I have really recently learned is that there's a a time tracker recently released by TopTel, which takes screenshots while you're working, and there's something really Big Brother about that, and I don't necessarily think that it's necessary for everybody, and I don't use it myself, but if you're in a position or have ever been in a position or think you might be in a position in the future where you feel like you might need to justify your time, then I guess it's insurance. And so for some people, even just for self-satisfaction reasons, feel like they need to keep those kinds of records, then that's a really good option. So that's TopTel. And Justin Isaac is community manager there.
Wow, there's been some really, really, really great really, really great tips go so far in this panel. I just want to kind of round it out with like one last question for every single one of you guys, which is, what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's considering wanting to take on a role that involves remote work? Don't all jump at once.
Yeah, all right, I'll jump
really taking a good. Oh, sorry.
No,
sorry, Sarah. You.
No, please go.
No problem. I think really taking a good hard look at your personal tendencies and how you like to work and who you are is really important. So if you're an extrovert and you need lots of people stimulation, you're going to have to start getting that stimulation outside of work. You're not going to go out with your coworkers every day to happy hour anymore. If you're prone to getting depressed when you stay in the house too much, then You have to know, okay, well, I have to go for a walk and get this much sun every day. And I think remote work is unique in that it really runs you up against all your negative tendencies, if that makes sense. And I think knowing what those tendencies are and consciously planning your remote routine to counter them is really important. I guess the other thing is that if you need a lot of management, if you need a lot of people really looking after you, then either you need to be very proactive about getting that, or working remotely is just not for you.
Agreed, and I think I'll piggyback off that and say that it most definitely isn't for everybody. But you're not going to know until you try it. And I remember making this decision by default, I guess, when I first started working remotely, and the role was just too good to give up, and I had family, so it was there were more pros than cons. If there are equal numbers of pros and cons, then just try it. I think the worst that can happen is it's not for you, it doesn't work, and then you turn around and you do something else. And that's kind of good advice across community in general. Not everything works all of the time, but if you don't try it, you'll never know. So yeah, give it a go and just be prepared to pivot if it's not for you.
Definitely. I find one question that I often get, or concern from other people that I talk to who are considering trying this for the first time, is the loneliness factor of working, this image of just working alone from home all day, and people being kind of hesitant to jump into that as a daily reality. But I do think there are a lot of avenues for, as I think Katherine was mentioning earlier, finding your own community, whether that's through taking a lunch break with a friend, or finding a co-working space with a great community that you enjoy working out of, or however it might work best for you. I think Sarah's absolutely right. The only way to know if it's something, if it's something that you're considering doing, that you're curious enough that you think this might work for me, there should be a way that you find to make it work for you. There's so much flexibility that comes with it, that I think as long as you are disciplined and motivated enough to make it work, you'll find the way to make it happen that's right for you.
Yeah, and if at all possible, I try to take baby steps again, right? I mean, if you currently have a job where they allow 1 or 2 days of remote working, try it out. I mean, you quickly find out whether or not it's for you. You probably have a good connection with your team, and they'll tell you if they don't like what you're doing, right? So I don't know if I would go full on remote if I'm still in doubt whether or not it's for me. Like, I would try it maybe for a little bit, or try on a side job, but it's such a, you need so much discipline to get this going, right? You really need to know whether or not you have it before you jump in and start a new job and lose half a year of your life, basically.
Really, 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 really great points. Thank you guys all so much for being willing to join us on this panel. I know, at least for Brianna and myself, this is kind of a little bit later at night. And does anybody else have anything else, like any final tips that they want to add or share?
I guess I realized that what I said sounded quite negative earlier, and I want to say I think that what I said and what other people have said about being shoved up against some of your own tendencies and having to meet those head on is actually a promise. It's a challenge. It's something that's great. And once you do that and you really learn to kind of know yourself and know how you work, and that will be invaluable even if you return to an office. And I think it can bring you a great deal of joy to meet these challenges. And I guess I want to make sure that we don't sound negative, because it's been a huge gift to work remotely, not just in terms of the obvious things like travel, but in terms of just really figuring out how I live and who I am and how I want to work in ways that I think that other people don't know.
No, I mean, we really focused on the downsides, right? I mean, of course, it's amazing. I mean, you won't even know whether or not I'm wearing pants currently. It's really a perfect way of working. I mean, you get a lot of freedom, you get a lot of creativity, you get to decide whether this is the moment where you want to focus. You don't have colleagues kind of walking by and telling you about their visit to the vet. It's really, I mean, it's amazing. But there are some downsides, and I mean, that's what we kind of focused on here. But yeah, I mean, come on. You're sitting at home on the couch if you want. You can go for coffee. You can go to the gym. You can do whatever. It's amazing. But if there were no downsides, no one would do it. I mean,
it is amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. Totally agree. Bears, are you wearing pants?
Yeah. Of course I am.
I fully back up what you're saying. It's amazing. I feel incredibly fortunate that I'm able to work like this for all of the obvious family and other commitment reasons, but also just because, yeah, as we kind of alluded to, it's a journey. Katherine, especially as you were just saying, it's a journey, and it's a really interesting way to learn lots of things about yourself and make really interesting connections, because meeting people online and having a sort of a background before you get to meet them in real life makes for really rich relationships, and so for all of those reasons I value it. And as you can see, I'm about to lose my light.
Nice. Really, really, again, thank you guys so much for sharing such valuable tips and feedback across all of this. It's been really, really insightful, not only for me, but I'm sure for everyone tuning in as well. I think I'm going to try to see if I can toss this back over to the MyCMGR team. Are you guys there?
That was an awesome panel. You guys gave some great tips. I've been doing remote community management for years, and Dom is also a remote community manager, so we totally agree with all the insightful tips that you give on the air, so thank you. Yeah, do you have anything to add?
No, I think we've got it. Great job, guys. It was really fantastic stuff, and yeah, so everybody who's watching, thanks a lot for paying attention to this panel, and we will be seeing you guys in approximately
3 minutes, actually.
Approximately 13 minutes.
I can do math.
For the next
great.
one.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Bye.